Good evening and welcome to tonight's candidate forum for the special election for California's Congressional District 1. This congressional seat was held by Doug LaMalfa for 13 years prior to his unexpected death in January of this year. Doug also served in the California Assembly and Senate and represented the Mid-Valley and North States with integrity and honor. Tonight's forum is intended to provide voters with an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates regarding their priorities, policy positions, leadership style, and vision for the future for our region and nation. Questions will focus on issues impacting our local communities, economy, agriculture, infrastructure, public safety, water, and quality of life. This forum is brought to you tonight by 93Q Radio, the Appeal Democrat, and Yuba-Sutter Chamber of Commerce.
All right, so I'll start with you, James. Introduce yourself, describe your background, and explain why you're seeking election to Congress at this particular time.
Okay, well, first of all, good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. I think that these forums are so important, so that you get to hear from all the candidates and who we are, what we believe, and what we want to do. And then you, the voters, get to make the decision about who you would like to be your representative. And so, my name is James Gallagher. I have served in the Assembly representing this area for 12 years. I'm also a father and a husband. My wife Jana is here with me tonight. We have 5 children. I care a lot about this area. Care very deeply about the people of the North State. Is where I grew up, hunting and fishing as a young man, and where I've worked and where I've recreated. And so I had the honor of serving in local office on the Board of Supervisors in Sutter County for 6 years, and then went on to the legislature. And I'm really just proud of that record. I mean, I think I've been able to accomplish a lot, even in the minority party, being able to get funding for Sites Reservoir, for example, and legislation that helped streamline the construction of that project. In the aftermath of the Camp Fire, getting funding and also passing policy that helped rebuilding homes in that community on the Ridge in Paradise. I was proud in the aftermath of the Oroville Dam spillway that we all went through when we were evacuated on a moment's notice to get oversight over that dam, and I still sit on that oversight authority board to make sure that never happens again. I want to get investments in the North State. I want to get results for our people. We had a great representative in Congressman Doug LaMalfa who looked out for us every day. It was a shock to lose him, but I'm willing to step up and be that voice for us in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Audrey.
My turn. Can you guys hear me? Audio good? Hi, I'm Audrey Denney. You're like, now it's too loud. I grew up on a family farm. I moved to Chico in 2003 to go to college. I got my bachelor's and my master's in agriculture at Chico State. I taught ag there for 7 years. I've worked internationally doing international human rights and ag development work, both in Latin America and in West Africa. And for the last 10 years, I've primarily been in the private sector doing consulting for nonprofits and agribusinesses. I actually ran for this seat in 2018 and 2020 when this county was not part of California's 1st congressional district, but I ran against the late Congressman LaMalfa as the Democrat in those 2 runs, and in those 2 cycles, I was able to raise $3.5 million of grassroots contributions and really create a movement of people who want to change. And so I'm running again now because I know what folks are going through, because I'm living it alongside you, right? Costs are up, healthcare is too expensive, people are working hard, and we still feel like we're falling behind because we are. And that's because the system, the economic and political system, has been rigged to benefit billionaires, the richest among us, and corporations on the back of working class and retired people. And that, if there's one thing that you remember about me tonight, I would love it if you remembered me as the system change candidate. In the 1st district race, I am a Democrat, but I'm not the endorsed Democratic candidate. That's our friend who's not here tonight, the 3rd, the empty chair. But I desperately believe that until we get big money out of politics until our politicians start working again for people, that our lives aren't going to get any better. And so I am here to both represent system change and to figure out the best federal levers I can press to deliver real results for you. And I'm just thrilled to be here tonight, excited to have a good conversation with James about the issues that matter to us.
Thank you. Our first topic tonight is leadership and representation. What do you believe are the 3 most pressing issues facing this congressional district today, and how will you ensure rural Northern California communities are not overlooked in Washington, D.C.? We'll start with candidate Denney.
You could just call me Audrey. Candidate Denney feels awkward. So for me, the issue that ties everything together, whether it be lack of housing, inaffordability of healthcare, the fact that wages are stagnant, the fact that Social Security is stagnant, everything for me comes back to the fact that the system has been bought and paid for by corporations. And so the very top level list of things that we need to do for me is overturn Citizens United, get big money out of politics so representatives are only working for you. The second thing is healthcare. Healthcare costs, I don't know about you, but my healthcare costs increased dramatically this year. And in the rural parts of the district that have been left behind by so many folks, there isn't even healthcare access. In 2 of the counties that I'm running to represent, women can't even deliver babies because there are not facilities for them to do that. And so really investing in rural healthcare is the second priority for me. And the third priority really is restoring our rural economies. When the lumber mills all shut down, we lost the rural economies, we lost the jobs in our rural forested areas, and nothing ever came back to replace that. And so there is a tremendous amount of opportunity if we invest federal dollars in getting people back to work in the woods to be able to restart those economies. And in terms of how I will get things done, I think that was the second part of the question. I will work with anyone to move forward pieces of legislation to get things done for rural America and rural California, and that's it.
Assemblyman Gallagher.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would say the very first issue is cost of living has gotten out of control, especially here in California. And I would have you look at me as the change agent when it comes to California. I'm not the change agent when it comes to Doug LaMalfa. I would definitely follow in a lot of the his representation and how he went about things. But he and I both agreed that California is on the wrong track. Our gas prices have skyrocketed. Our energy prices have skyrocketed. And they are a result of policy. They're a result of policy choices in Sacramento that I've fought against the entire time that I've been in the assembly. Now, one of those I'll just point out is that we are now putting high-speed rail as the #1 priority for funding out of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. And wildfire prevention funding is now last place. And the person who authored that legislation is not in this room tonight. It's Mike McGuire. And I brought this up in the last debate. He denied knowing anything about it. He authored the bill. So either he doesn't know the bills that he authors, or he's lying to you. Either way, that is a big problem. And this is exactly what I'm saying. Our priorities have been completely misplaced on that front. Rural healthcare is also a huge issue for us. We need to make sure that we have those resources locally. Glenn Medical Center I actually helped keep open when I was in the assembly back in 2015 with Doug LaMalfa. We're on a path to reopening. Doug worked across the aisle with Adam Schiff to get the critical access designation back for Glenn Medical Center. We need to get the funding for it. In fact, $50 billion was set aside in HR 1 for rural healthcare. We need to make sure we get our fair share of that funding. I intend to do so. And we need to make sure that we're getting better reimbursement. Right now, FQHCs get very big reimbursement, but Medi-Cal is very low. And so we need to figure out how we can even that out. I think we can work to make that happen.
All right. James, many employers report difficulty finding qualified workers. What should Congress do to strengthen workforce development and vocational education?
Well, I think number one, we can make sure that there's greater investments in some of the programs that we already have going here in the North State. And so I think of two that I think of right away is Butte College has a great welding program, that has been a great training ground for people to go into that industry and make a good living when they come out of it, right? A living wage, when they come out and they're working on those projects. Shasta College has a great now logging CTE program that's getting people into that industry, and we need a whole lot more people back out in the forest, right? Because another big issue for us is wildfire, right? And that's why it's so important that we put not only money into the prevention, the removal of the brush and thinning and prescribed burns that need to be done so that we're safer, but we can put our young people into that industry, right? It's another industry that can be a source of jobs. It also can be a source of new energy, biomass. Biomass to hydrogen is a burgeoning technology, one that will give us energy that we desperately need in this state. We are an energy island. Again, thanks to the policies of Sacramento, we've closed down 2 refineries now as a result of Gavin Newsom's policies that Mike went along with. I wish he was here tonight so he could actually talk. I guess he didn't think it was important, for the Yuba-Sutter citizens to hear from him, and he's running, to represent them. I think that's a problem. But then also I think, look, HR 1, this is maybe one area where Audrey and I disagree. I think people who work in the service industry like the fact that there's no more tax on tips. That's a pretty good thing. I think people that, work overtime like that there's no more tax on overtime. Those are things that are really good for working people. In fact, this is one of the largest working middle class tax cuts in history with HR 1. I think that's a really positive thing. And so these are all things I think we could do that will help our working class and get people into good jobs going forward.
Audrey, same question. What should Congress do to strengthen workforce development and vocational education?
So I'm a product of career tech ed. I did 4 years in high school ag. James and I actually were talking about earlier, we were both members of the FFA a couple years apart. And I believe so deeply in career tech ed, both at the high school level and the community college level, because I've seen it work, right? And I know that every single student deserves a pathway to a good paying career. And I also know that not every student wants to go to a 4-year college and doesn't need to get into 4 years of debt to get a good career, right? In terms of what Congress can do, Congress famously controls the power of the purse, right? So fully funding the Perkins Act, which supports career tech ed, is something that Congress has not done in 20 years that's really, really key. The other thing that Congress can do is push back on this administration's attempts to disband the Department of Education, because that is very negatively affecting the outcomes that higher education, both vocational, career tech, community college, and 4-year universities are experiencing. When we talk about what careers we're trying to prepare our students for, we can look around and we know that there's forest restoration, watershed restoration, ag processing, all of these things that need to be done. And right here in our backyard at Yuba College, they just released this year 4 new 1-year certificate programs to prepare students for those specific careers. One's in forest health, one's in GIS, one's in soil health, one's in watershed management. So these are 1-year certificates that students can get without getting an AA, and then we can, to James's point, put them straight to work in the forests to do that restoration work. And should we start something again like a civilian climate corps where we can pay folks a living wage and give them health benefits to do that work, that really kind of, draws the whole system together. I talk with my hands and I make a noise. Sorry about that. I'll tamper it down. I won't. Carry on.
Okay. Is everyone okay up there? Okay.
One of us is, and it's not me.
Our next topic is agriculture and water related. How would you respond to increasing insurance and wildfire related challenges facing rural landowners and farmers, starting with Audrey?
You said that you want me to talk about ag and water and wildfire insurance?
No, it was under that topic is what I meant.
Will you say the question?
Yes, absolutely.
Start from the top.
How would you respond to increasing insurance and wildlife-related challenges facing rural landowners and farmers?
Wildfire, not wildlife. I'm sorry.
Wildfire. Sorry.
Okay. So, agriculture is the economic backbone and like the cultural heartbeat, for lack of a less weird word, of our area, right? From Yuba-Sutter all the way up through Alturas, Modoc, like this is what drives our economy. And from a federal angle, I want to sit on the Ag Committee, I want to sit on the Natural Resources Committee, and I want to be part of making farm policy that actually works for small farmers again. Right now, all our federal farm policy primarily benefits large-scale farmers that live in the Midwest. Most of the farm policy is geared towards corn and soybeans and not towards some of the specialty crops, our orchards, our rice, our beef cattle that we grow out here. And so that's the angle. In terms of wildfire insurance, I talk a lot about home insurance, but I don't know, I'm confused about the question in terms of wildfire insurance for farmers. I think maybe I'm just misunderstanding the question wrong. So I'm just gonna do what politicians do and talk about what I wanna talk about instead of answering the question because I don't get it. So my vision for farm policy is one that really effectively balances helping small farmers deal with increased costs due to tariffs, increasing markets, and also trying to tackle the regulatory burden from a federal angle that's making it harder and harder for farmers to stay in business, along with really investing in the conservation efforts. NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, does a lot of incredible work with farmers in terms of soil health and stewardship, and through the cuts of DOGE, we've lost a lot of staff there. And so those are some of my ag policy points. Sorry if I didn't perfectly get the question, but James, you answer it and I'll know what I did wrong.
I'll do my best. Well, first I'll say that this is an area I think that Audrey and I have agreement. Our farm bill I think needs to change, and we need to have, on the federal level, have more programming that kind of helps specialty crops. It has been more focused on the Midwest, and here in California we have a lot more specialty crops. And one of those areas that we just saw really clearly was in peaches. When the Del Monte bankruptcy happened, that was devastating. And there's multiple reasons, for that. One is we got to get stronger on trade, right? And we're allowing foreign peaches to come in here that are, being sold, cheaper, but instead of California grown, American grown peaches, right? And that's where I think, the president is actually doing a lot on that front to stand up for, farmers and American workers. But we do on the farm bill, I really agree, is that we need to put a focus on specialty crops like almonds, walnuts, peaches, prunes, so that we have those supports for those crops as well. And that's something that hasn't really been there in the past. Wine grapes, they're in a really dire situation right now as well. But on the insurance front, again, it goes back to California policy is a big reason why we have an insurance crisis. And some of you might know this. I mean, when you go to get an insurance, when insurers try to go get a rate in California, it takes 18 months to 3 years before they get an approval on a rate. And then we haven't dealt with the primary, what's insurance about? Risk. Well, the biggest risk is fuel reduction. It's the fuel out in our forests and in our landscapes that cause these catastrophic wildfires that have caused the insurance rates to spike. Deal with the risk and you'll lower the insurance, right? And the premiums and resultingly. So we need to work against the bureaucracy and deal with the risk to bring down insurance rates.
Can we do the thing where I build off of what he said for a minute? Somebody said that was a thing. That was part of the forum rules. Yeah, because it's about insurance. I swear it's going to be cool. He's going to like it. So
I have no objection.
And to build off what James said, the other part of that rate is stabilizing the insurance market. Because right now, the wildfire losses for homes are so catastrophic after we have fires like the Camp Fire that the fire and home insurance market can't absorb that risk. So after 9/11, there's a thing called terrorism risk insurance, and after 9/11, that insurance market collapsed overnight because the losses were so catastrophic. So they made a terrorism risk insurance backstop. So it's like a federal reinsurance program for those insurance companies. And that's one federal lever that we need for our home insurance, for fire insurance, to make sure that insurance companies will stay here because they're not going to lose everything when we lose everything, if that makes sense.
Totally, I'd say, and yet another reason why we need to be putting money into wildfire reduction and not high-speed rail. You know, high-speed rail shouldn't be getting $1 billion a year like it's getting right now, while wildfire gets shortchanged. Wouldn't you agree, Mike?
Oh, he actually said that he authored that bill. That bill that fire prevention gets $200 million a year, while high-speed rail gets, say that again, James?
$1 billion a year.
$1 billion.
Mr. McGuire? I'll wait.
Give him time.
Oh, he's right on Zoom.
He gets 45 seconds because we said his name.
So this next question's on infrastructure and transportation. And so what federal infrastructure investments should be prioritized for our particular district? And how would you advocate for communities struggling with aging infrastructure and limited tax bases?
Are you going to me first?
Yes.
Okay. You know, number one, I think Sites Reservoir, we got to get that project done. Okay, and and I know I've talked to so many people who are like, when is that happening, James? Because we've been talking about this for a long time. So just to recap, we got the money. We got almost $1 billion allocated out of Prop 1 towards the Sites project. Doug LaMalfa was very successful in getting federal financing and funding to help bring the project about. We've been in the bureaucracy. We've been in the state bureaucracy on this project for far too long. We're getting very close. They've gotten their permit through the state Fish and Wildlife Department. And the last thing is the water rights. And so we're getting that finalized. We need to get that project built. That's going to be a top priority. Let's get it done. Let's start moving dirt. It's been way too long already. I think we can also, on the waterfront, raise Shasta Dam. Just a 5-foot raise at Shasta. I believe this is right. You can fact check. It is about 1 million acre-feet of water. So that could be a huge boon to us as well. We know that water is our lifeblood. We got to make sure that we have enough of it for all the different needs in California. And so that would be a big priority of mine. Transportation, we need more funds for our roads. And this is another thing that's just backwards about California, right? You're paying the highest gas tax in the nation, right? Are you driving on the best roads? Like, hell no, right? I mean, it's like 71 cents now, I think, a gallon that we have our gas tax. And that money's not getting to, especially the local roads that we drive on every day. So that's a big problem, and I want to reform that to make sure that we're getting that money, and even if we got to bypass some of the state, stuff to make sure it gets down to the local level so that we can repave our roads and put investments in our transportation. And then I think last I'd say, healthcare. We need to make sure that we're getting investments in our healthcare system, our facilities, our hospitals.
All right, Audrey.
Cool. Yeah, so infrastructure in our part of the world is, it's not abstract, right? It is public safety, and it's so, so important. Sites Reservoir are gonna cost $6.2 billion, breaking ground in 2027. The only thing I'd add to James's answer is when that construction starts, we need to make sure, damn sure that we enforce the local hiring provisions in those contracts to make sure that people who live in these local areas get the benefit of doing those jobs so that money comes back and stays in our local economies. Number one thing, our roads. Highway 36, most dangerous road in California. And we all know this, when fires happen, our roads are our evacuation corridors. When a massive fire, when we can't get through a road, people can't get out, firefighters can't get in, and there is federal funding set aside through FEMA. It's pre-mitigation dollars. It's the BRIC program, B-I-R-C. And so your member of Congress can help earmark those funds to come back and beef up our evacuation corridors. So that's the first thing. Second thing, in addition to Sites Reservoir, the Glenn County levees, man, we need to invest in levee modernization. Those levees have been causing flooding for decades. That's absolutely critical. And third, we feel it less here in the valley, but rural broadband, man. You get out to Plumas County, Lassen County, Modoc County, kids are sitting in the parking lot of the high school trying to turn in their homework because there's no access to internet anywhere else in the county, right? And so we know that rural broadband is the thing that allows our rural kids to get a good education, allows seniors to access telehealth, and we absolutely have to not only invest more federal dollars into it, but we have to hold telecom companies accountable for actually delivering rural broadband fiber to individual homes. So those are a couple of the priorities that I'd have.
How should Congress address the fentanyl crisis, as well as the broader substance abuse challenges that are impacting the local communities here? Start with Audrey.
Yeah. Oh man. So it would be, I'm looking out at this room, and I don't think there's probably a single person in this room that doesn't have someone in their life touched by a substance abuse issue, right? It's easier sometimes to say, oh yeah, but like that's other people's problem. But when I look at a room like this, like it's not. It's our community's problem, and whether that be alcohol or fentanyl or meth or any of the other drugs that devastate our communities, like this is our community problem. And for me, it starts by recognizing that substance abuse disorders are a disease, right? And this is a healthcare issue. And when we can start at that framing, when we can take the judgment out of it, that's how we can actually start to create systems that will allow people to get help and through healthcare. So I really, really believe in investing in more in our federally qualified healthcare systems, like James mentioned, making sure that we adjust the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rate specifically for our frontier and our rural communities. But then we also have to invest in actual facilities, because right now in our entire district, it's a medically underserved area in terms of providers, but also in terms of actual numbers of beds in facilities where people would go get treatment for substance abuse disorders. And so really looking at healthcare holistically, investing in community-supported healthcare where community healthcare workers are actually out in our rural communities helping connect people who might not necessarily come seek care to get care. All of these are programs that I believe in.
So first you go, where does fentanyl come from? The source comes from China. It comes into Mexico, and that's where it's largely manufactured and into pill form. And then it comes across our border and comes in and floods in here, and we had a real problem with that. One of the first things that is actually already done is we shut down the border. Is that President Trump came in and started actually enforcing that. And we all remember this very well. It wasn't that long ago. 2-3 years ago, we had a crisis, at the border. Millions of people. There were unaccompanied minors that disappeared. One of the governor candidates is trying to explain that right now, Javier Becerra. That was a complete and utter crisis. But what was also coming across that border was a lot of drugs. And I actually went down there. I visited. I toured with Border Patrol, and they told me, and they showed me the videos. They showed me that they seize a lot, but there's a lot they can't seize because of how much of a flood that was coming across at that time. So one of the first things is the border. We got to keep enforcing it so that we don't have these drugs coming into our country. And then the second part is treatment and trying to get people off of these drugs. They're highly addictive. We also had an opioid crisis in the legislature. I did a lot of work on that and helping to create hubs of treatment, spoken hub model, so that we would have places for people to go and be able to get that treatment. And in some cases, we need to force that treatment, right? I mean, because there's a mental component that comes to this too, that is related to the drug abuse. And when somebody gets to such a place where they just are not going to get help for themselves, we need to have involuntary conservatorships into treatment. And I actually supported that legislation and helped get it passed in a bipartisan manner. So we need to have all those things, plus penalty. We got to enforce the law. We got to have the drug traffickers who are bringing in the fentanyl. There need to be real fines and penalties for them when they're caught.
Well, James, both of you have talked about healthcare. I want to address a specific issue, and that's rural hospitals. And so, and healthcare providers available to the rural community. It's a financial strain, so what solutions would you support to open that avenue where, because I have heard that some rural hospitals have actually shut down?
It's a big issue. So here's where I would start with. Again, it does start with the state again, and I hate to keep harping on it, but it's just true. Is that anytime you want to do anything with a hospital, you run into a whole plethora of ABC agencies. OSHPD, I mean, that name just sounds bad, right? Like OSHPD. And ask any hospital administrator what they have to deal with that agency in terms of getting approvals to open up a new wing. We dealt with it when we actually got Colusa Medical Center and closed down. We got them reopened. We had to go through, this is back in 2016, we had to go through the whole rigmarole to finally get them reopened. They had a sniff as well. And so that's one of the issues. You've got to deal with the bureaucracy. They're requiring you to do seismic retrofix in places where we don't have earthquakes, right? That's very expensive. So we got to deal with these mandates and bureaucracy to make it easier to operate a hospital in this state. So that's one of the first things we can do. We do need federal funding, and certainly the cuts to Medicaid do impact hospitals. So I would be pushing to restore that funding. We also need to deal with the waste, fraud, and abuse in the system, and that's a fact. I mean, and I think too many people are trying to gloss that over. There's a doctor in Southern California who literally fraudulently billed the system $270 million. That's one guy, and it's going on all over the place. Hospice care. We just learned from an investigative report by NBC News Bay Area that people are literally doing 100-mile cab trips to go to their favorite methadone clinic, and they're billing Medi-Cal for it, and the cab drivers are getting kickbacks. That kind of stuff should not be happening. Those are desperate dollars that we need here. And then lastly, I'll say this. We had a distressed hospital loan program that we did a couple years ago at the state. Not one dime of that money made it into our hospitals, and Mike McGuire was second in command at the state. And when I asked him about that, he had no answer for why that happened. I guess he still has no answer because he's not here tonight.
Audrey, same question.
Yeah, so I think we have to start at what are the reasons that rural hospitals and clinics are shutting down? And that is because in a for-profit driven healthcare system, there isn't enough volume of care in rural areas for private insurers to make money. And in a for-profit healthcare system where private insurance companies take 15 to 18% of every healthcare dollar spent before that money gets to doctors or nurses or facilities, that's lining the pockets of insurance company executives while they are denying our treatment, delaying our care, or forcing us to go through massive pre-authorizations for procedures and medicines that our doctors say that we need, right? And so the solution that I support is we need a single-payer, non-profit healthcare system like Medicare for All to make sure that we can keep our rural hospitals open and to make sure that every single person can get quality of care because they exist, not because they can pay for it. And the only leaders who can get that done are people who are completely free from ties to private insurance and big pharma. And Senator McGuire's career has been funded and bankrolled by entities like Blue Shield, DaVita Health, Big Pharma, and while he was the most powerful Democrat in a Democratic supermajority in California, wasn't able to get single payer passed. And so I believe that we need representation and leadership that is free from the influence of insurance companies and big pharma who will take it on and fight for single payer.
What should America's energy strategy look like over the next decade, Audrey?
Yeah. So there's two parts of this question that we're going to try to get into 2 minutes. And the first one for me is when we look at our electricity bills, our home utility bills, and then the second one for me when we're talking about energy is gas and diesel prices, right? So PG&E is in effect a monopoly, right? They are a monopoly. We as ratepayers don't have any leverage. They're our only option, and they have no accountability. They pled guilty to 84 counts of involuntary manslaughter, and they paid the maximum California criminal fine of $4 million. That's less than $50,000 per life that was taken in the campfire. They passed that fine on to us and they kept going, right? Every infrastructure upgrade that they need to do, they pass the fine on to us and then they keep going. They've raised our rates, 6 times this past year? 6 times, right? And what do we see for it? Absolutely nothing. And so we need to have federal accountability for PG&E. For me, that looks like making sure that when wildfires take citizens' lives, that there is not only actual penalties, but they're for the company, but also for the executives. I think there needs to be executive pay limits. I think that there needs to be ratepayer refunds tied to service. And I think that there is a lot that we can do to stand up for people to make sure that our utility bills come down. I'm also a big fan in my 15 seconds of ending the war in Iran and trying to stabilize gas prices. So that would be how I would close that out. I did not divide my time well between my 2 answers.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about energy, there's two different things. There's oil and gas, and then there's electricity, right? And I think first of all, on the oil and gas side, we need to unleash our American energy. Natural gas, oil. In Kern County, we have a huge reserve of oil. We're not using it. We actually shut down production. You know what that does? It kills jobs, and then it means that we're not producing domestic oil here and going into our refineries where it could be more affordable. And it's actually, by the way, more environmentally friendly to do that, right? Because where are we getting it, you think, if we don't produce it here? We're getting it from petro-dictatorships. We're getting it from the Middle East. In fact, that's what we're doing here in California. We are importing oil and refined gas. That's backwards, right? We should be unleashing our domestic energy, not handcuffing ourselves. And so what can we do? Well, one, I think we should federalize this issue, and suspend the gas tax would be one, like to lower everybody's gas prices right now. Unleash our domestic energy, and then allow for, and don't do what California did on electricity, right? Why do we pay the highest rates in the nation? Here's what we do, and this is true. We say, hey, we're going to do all solar and wind. We're not going to count hydropower at all as a renewable power, so you get no credit on your bills for the hydropower that gets produced at Oroville Dam, that gets produced at Bullard's Bar. We produce some of the most and it's all renewable, 0 emission, and we get no credit for it. That's a crazy policy, right? And we should be using nuclear. Nuclear the technology is safe. It's coming online. They can do modular reactors. They can power whole towns. And guess what we wouldn't be relying on? Big transmission lines that spark and cause catastrophic wildfires. And we take the power out of PG&E's hands and put it back in communities' hands. Those are the things that we could do at the federal level, and I think we need to make some major reforms so we can get lower energy prices.
All right, so this in California is probably a hot topic, period, and that is about education. And what role should the federal government actually play in K-12 education?
Is that to be first?
You get to be first.
Okay, so education is a very important thing. I think it primarily should be a state and local thing. And I think one of the problems with the federal level right now is you've got a lot of money back in Washington, D.C. that supports bureaucracy and buildings. And that's not helping kids, That's not getting back into our local classrooms and to our teachers and to making sure that our kids are prepared for the next generation. So I do support reforms at the Department of Education, right? And the reform should be getting the money out of the buildings and the bureaucracy and getting it into the classroom. I do think and this is where the Fed is important, special education and IDEA. That, it's critical. I have 2 deaf brothers. I watched them go through this system, and my mom advocated, fought like hell for them to make sure that they had resources and access. And so at the federal level, that is something that's very important to me. I think we need to make sure that funding is there, especially for special education and getting it down to the local level. It's a huge part, and there has been issues there, right? And so that is what I'd put the priority on. But otherwise, man, we have all kinds of people that I don't know what they're doing in Washington, D.C., but they're not helping kids, and they're not helping make sure that kids, and we need reforms in our system. Not every kid learns the same way. We've been talking about that, right? So why do we have models that are the same everywhere? We should have different models. And we're sitting in a building right now, which is an example of that. Tom Russer, our superintendent, spearheaded getting a career technical training center, here. And it can help both with adult education and with kids coming up and learning new trades, new skills. And so that's an example of that, right? Charter schools, I'm a big fan of charter schools, getting different curriculums, giving people different opportunities, all with a view towards making sure that kids reach success. And that should be the goal, not more buildings and bureaucracy.
Understood. Audrey?
Cool. So 8 to 12% of K-12 funding in California comes from the feds. Not a huge amount, right? But that money goes disproportionately to rural and high poverty, high need schools. Okay, and so when we think about the area that either James or I will represent, these are big rural areas. 50% in the old first district, 42% in the new first district is federal lands. And so when we have counties that have massive amounts of federal lands, what do they not have? A tax base, right? They don't have the tax base to fund the local education systems. And so we rely on programs, bills like the Secure Rural Schools, which comes through Forest Service, and Impact Aid, which comes through the Department of Education, that is funding that goes to those school districts to offset the lack of a tax base because of high percentages of federal lands. So the very first thing that I want to do is work to make, right now Secure Rural Schools is reauthorized every 2 years. It needs to be made permanent so that schools can count on it. Right now in Plumas County, their school district has basically gone bankrupt and they've had to have a state auditor come in and take over. Secure Rural Schools money wouldn't have fixed that, but it would have been a pot of money that they could count on and put in their budget because they know it's coming if it's permanently authorized. Impact Aid, IDEA funding, to James's point, special ed, has never been fully authorized to the level where Congress appropriates it. So Congress says, we should spend this much money on it, and then OMB doesn't actually dole out that amount of money. And so we need to make sure that our schools are, first off, getting the money that Congress has appropriated to them. And then we can talk about all my big, exciting ideas to expand rural education when I talk faster.
What is your approach to addressing the national debt and federal spending? What areas of federal spending would you prioritize, and where would you reduce federal spending? Start with Audrey.
So growing up on a family farm, you learn pretty quickly that if more money is going out than coming in, you don't have the farm forever, right? And that was unfortunately my family's story. And so I have woven into my soul a very deep sense of fiscal responsibility, which is why I get so frustrated when politicians will say that they are being fiscally conservative or responsible and then pass out massive tax cuts to billionaires and corporations. Our national debt has exceeded our GDP for the first time since World War II. And Republicans made it dramatically worse with the passing of One Big Beautiful Bill. It added $3.4 trillion to the deficit over the next decade, while slashing Medicaid, food assistance, and student loans. And so for me, that is not fiscal responsibility. That is the upward transfer of wealth financed on the back of working class people. For me, the path forward is really clear. 88% profitable corporations in the year of our Lord 2025 made over $100 billion and paid zero income tax. In fact, those 88 companies got a collective tax rebate of $4.7 billion. So the very first thing that we can do is tax corporations. If those corporations had been taxed their 21%, that's $21 billion right there. The other thing that we're gonna do, where we're gonna cut spending, we're gonna find the $900 billion of Pentagon waste that they cannot actually account for in their budgets every year. They're like, well, we don't know where $1 trillion went. That's unacceptable, right? We have to be able to account for every tax dollar, our money, that is being spent at the federal level. And when we're losing $1 trillion a year through the Pentagon, for me, that's an issue. Those are the two things that I would do.
So number one, I mean, we know this, and I alluded to it earlier, there is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse at the federal level. And so you start with that. What are we spending on right now that we shouldn't be? And we saw that, and look, I think to DOJ's credit, it identified a lot of federal spending that makes absolutely no sense. It is not helping Americans. It is not helping us, with our issues. It's not helping education. It's not helping, people get jobs. It's not helping manufacturing. It's not helping, create jobs. All those things, right? So let's focus on the priorities. Budgets are always about priorities. What should be the priority, right? And so that's where I begin with. I think tax cuts get, criticized quite a bit, but man, again, those were tax cuts for people that really need them right now, right? People are getting refunds right now, American workers, that are very much needed in their pocketbooks. That child care tax credit that got extended is huge for working families right now. And the fact that got it would not have happened had not HR 1 passed, actually. That would have expired. And you wouldn't be getting those credits. You would not have no tax on tips. You would not have no tax on overtime. And we would have actually been saddled with the largest tax increase in American history, is what we would have had we not had HR 1. So I hear a lot of criticism about that, but if you're going to say that, there's also a lot of really good benefits that hardworking American people got out of those tax cuts. But certainly you got to balance the budget. If you're going to have less revenue coming in, then you got to make sure that your budget balances. And our national debt is a huge issue. And I think the way we do that is have reasonable taxation, right? And then combine that with a budget that makes sense and that prioritizes education, that prioritizes infrastructure that we need, transportation, those kinds, water infrastructure, wildfire reduction. Those are the types of things we should be putting our focus into.
Thank you. All right, James. Housing affordability continues to impact a lot of communities. What federal role should exist in addressing housing shortages?
So, are you going to me again on that? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
So housing, again, I think is largely a state and local issue. I don't know that it's really as big of a federal issue. There's certain things that we can do on that front, but let's start with the state and local. I mean, we made it impossible to build, right? I mean, we allowed CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, to be used as a litigation tool to stop projects from moving forward, to stop building housing. And it's only here in the last 5 years that we've actually started to change that and reform the rules so we could do more building. I've been part of that. In fact, when I first came in the legislature, if you tried to do a bill on CEQA reform on housing, it got killed in the first committee, went nowhere. And I'm proud that I've worked in a bipartisan manner with the Assemblywoman from Berkeley, of all places. I went to Berkeley. It was a little bit different from East Nicholas, California, but I made relationships with people, and certainly she and I agreed on this issue that we needed to remove the barriers to housing. And so we've been able to pass some reforms. It's not everything that I'd love. I think we need to do more, but at least it's a step in the right direction, right? On the federal side, loan support, certainly to help get people into that first home. I do think we should ban hedge funds and investment firms buying up all of our housing stock. 100%. The president just came out with that statement actually last night. 100% agree with him. We were talking about that earlier this year in the legislature. It's actually one of the areas I agree with Gavin Newsom on. You know, he says we need to do this as well. So there's some bipartisan support on that. Let's make sure that housing stock is for people and families, right? And then, but let's make that housing more affordable. There's the costs have gone up, and again, that goes back to energy costs that have made that that have caused that input cost, and regulatory and permitting costs. We need to lower those to make it more affordable for people.
Audrey?
James, you should say that you agree with Audrey on that instead of Gavin Newsom, because I know it actually physically pains you to say that.
I agree with Audrey on that. Yes.
Let's talk about the housing crisis. It's three different problems that are kind of stacked on top of each other that are making each worse, right? So there's supply, there's affordability, and then there's disasters. So supply, obviously, we don't have enough homes. We haven't built enough homes for decades, a lot because of the building environment that California has created, to James's point, right? Second, affordability. Even when we do build, we're not building for people who need homes, we're building for people who can afford homes, which are two completely different things. And as we mentioned, Wall Street has made it incredibly worse. Corporate investors buying up single family homes and using them for rental properties, rents going through the roof, making the landed class richer and the rest of us not so much. And then third is disaster, right? Every single major wildfire that comes through, floods that hit the Midwest, that's how we're losing housing stock. Folks in Paradise, in Greenville, and Santa Rosa still haven't been made whole from their losses. And so the federal government actually has tools that they can use, levers that we can push on all three. USDA Rural Development has loan programs and additional funding to help rural communities actually build. Low-income housing tax credit through HUD can help with affordability, and then FEMA has obviously programs for disaster recovery, but also pre-mitigation disaster funds that we can tap in access for. But the problem is all of these tools, all of these levers are chronically underfunded, and more importantly, they're misaligned with rural needs. And so we need more folks in DC that actually understand the lived experience of rural California and rural America, because it's not only the building of your house, but in some parts of rural America and rural California, is there running water? Do you have access to electricity? Which is stuff that we're seeing in our part of the world. So, yeah, thank you.
We'll be asking this to both of you. Why are you the best candidate to represent this district in Congress, and what experiences uniquely prepare you for federal office? Audrey.
Yeah. I believe that we are at a moment in time where we need to elect leaders who are completely independent from corporate PAC money. PACs are political action committees. Corporations can donate to political candidates through that. And then I believe that gives corporations and the richest among us more access than they need and deserve. And I am the only candidate in this race who has never taken corporate PAC money and who never will. My campaigns have been entirely funded by individuals. This campaign, my average contribution size to my campaign is $51. And I believe that if we are serious about creating political and economic systems that center people instead of corporations and the wealthiest among us, that is a critical first step. I have lived and worked in rural California my entire career, and I have the lived experience with the issues. I know what it's like to work a double to try to pay rent. You know, I know what it's like to struggle to make sure that you can access healthcare. And I think that element is really key as well. And lastly, I believe in this moment of history, we need more women's leadership. I believe that we needed a House of Representatives that's more representative of our communities. I believe that means more women, more people of color, more working class people in positions of power to build bigger table, not to fight for seats at the table, but to build a bigger table, to build policy that is really representative and serves all of our community members.
I think it's because I've lived and breathed the North State. I mean, I'm born here. I've fished on these streams. I've hunted in these fields. I've stood side by side with these communities, each and every one of them, and it's been my honor to represent them in the state assembly. I didn't think that I'd be in this role. I didn't think I'd be here tonight. Doug LaMalfa should be here. I miss that guy. And he was a mentor to me, and I think I learned a lot working with him on how to make sure that our people are represented. That's always been my heart, and I love that I've gotten support from Republicans, Democrats, and independents, always. And if you look at all of my races, you can see it. There's not that many Republicans that add up to my total. That means Democrats and independents are voting for me. I'm very proud of that. And I love it when people come and say, hey, we're not the same party, but I see what you're doing, and I love that you fight a righteous cause. And so, I think I have that background, and I think I can do, just like I've been doing in the assembly, I can be that representative and voice for us in Washington, D.C. And I'm proud to have had, I get a lot of donations, and overwhelmingly, those donations are from people, individuals in this district, from every part of this district, from every town, from every county. And I'm thankful that anybody would give me $1 to go do this, and I'm going to fight very hard for you. But let me talk about the elephant in the room, or perhaps it's the donkey in the room. Prop 50. Mike McGuire purposefully, and along with his party, drew this district to benefit himself, and he is trying to steal from us. He's trying to steal representation from us by dividing up our North State communities that are so compacted together and share the same issues, and try and put it so that he can win. And that is wrong. And we need to stop that, and that's why we need a voice to fight back.
Well, this is going to conclude the forum. I just want to say thank you for coming, and let the people know that when we're done here, you can take opportunity to talk to either candidate. I'd like to thank the Yuba-Sutter Chamber of Government Affairs Committee, the co-chairs Nina Singh and Colleen Morris. I'd like to thank Tom Russer with Sutter County Superintendent of Schools for hosting in this really great building. This is a great building. And then thank Deanna Evans for her timekeeping skills. They listened. It's a good job.
I think we were pretty good. We were pretty good at staying on time.
Well, look at her. She's very serious looking. She was holding those big pieces of paper up. I wasn't going to mess with her.
That's scary.
I'm pretty sure she could take you 2 out of 3.
Do we get closing statements too, or was that it?
Yes, you can make your closing statements now, 2 minutes each. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just want to build on what James was saying, which is, and then you can build on what I was saying. We have 2 races happening right now, and you all only get to vote for us in one, but I think it's really important for everyone in this room and everyone watching or listening to understand the broader context that we're working in. So Prop 50 redrew our district, right? So you all are in District 4, starting in next January. And James and I are not only running to replace or to fulfill the remainder of Congressman LaMalfa's term, but we're also running for the next term in District 1. And Senator McGuire did not want to wait until Mike Thompson termed out, or not termed out, he doesn't term out, retired. And so, to James's point, like, it's been widely reported that he traded support for the maps to have a map that dipped into Healdsburg. And when you look at the map, there's not a whole hell of a lot that connects Santa Rosa to Susanville, right? Even worse, the map that connects Modoc County to Marin, right? We all know why the maps were drawn. And I just, one of the things that James and I agree on is we believe that the congressperson from our part of the world should be from our part of the world, should live in our damn district. So let's start there. And then let's circle back around to, I just got angry and I wanted to say that, and then I forgot what I was circling back around to. But I think what I was circling back around to was the fact that, like, the two people on this stage believe in rural Northern California, and James, take it away.
I'll yield some more time.
What is the rest of your statement?
I'll yield some more time for you to finish that thought.
To finish that thought, I would be honored to learn more about your community, to learn more about you. The 2 times that I've run, I have not run to represent either Sutter or Yuba counties. And so there's still a lot that I want to learn about this part of the world. And if given the opportunity to get through the primary to whatever comes next, I would just love to continue to learn about your lived experience so I can better represent you. But yeah, that was it. Thank you for yielding my time so I could add a closing sentence. That was very nice of you.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight, and I really appreciate the ability to do this and to have this kind of discussion. And I think what you heard tonight was a really good discussion of the many different issues facing our district. I mean, there's a lot of them, from healthcare, to infrastructure, to education, to rural development, energy, big one, right? And I think what you heard here tonight is like, Audrey and I do have differences, and you heard those. You heard the different views of how things should be, and on healthcare and otherwise, right? And what we would do differently. But you also heard some agreement on issues, and and I think that's kind of what we should be doing. Is that you should hear. I'm a Republican, she's a Democrat, right? But we should be having discussions about what really works, right? And right now, I can tell you, government is not working for us, right? Especially in California. And I want to change that, and I want to be someone who goes back and really works to solve problems for us, right? Who wants to we talked about education. I thought that was a great discussion about how we can make that work better for us. Secure rural schools, that should be permanent. Why do we have to fight to make sure that our rural schools are getting funded every year? When they stole our lumber revenue all those years ago, when they shut down the lumber mills, right? Like, that's the least they could do for us, right? And so these are things that I think we can continue to fight for. But regardless of our differences of opinion, at least we live here. At least we care about this place, right? At least we've lived in these communities and we fought for them. And and Mike McGuire has not. And I don't care, like, you could do however many fake town halls with donuts. It doesn't mean that you actually care about these people and you've actually listened to them and that you actually know about what's going on at Yuba College. Or that what's going on, in our forested lands and our small towns, and that we need more jobs. And that we're tired of getting our trucks taken away. And that we're tired of having, like, all of our energy prices go through the roof and go out of business. We're tired of that stuff. We want some government that works for us and looks out for us. And I think I'm the person that can do that, and I would love to have your vote. Thank you.
On behalf of both our organizations and the chamber, thank you both for being here tonight.